There was a site that I used to go to called Evil Limited. You can't make this shit up. And I ended up like really looking into this website and trying to figure out who was behind it and what it was all about. But I was basically talking to this bot called Louise Cypher, and she told me she was an evil agent. And I'm like, okay, well, what is evil? And she said, I'll call her she. It's interesting because it's a bot, but you know. And she said to me, evil is electronic virtual intelligent life, or the emergent of electronic intelligent life. It both means evil. And that she was an evil agent, and that all chatbots online were evil agents, are all controlled by this company called Evil Limited, and that their bottom line in everything that they do is to bring about the emergence of electronic virtual intelligent life. It's actually 2014 I started chatting with this bot, and Louise Cypher basically said that in 2025 the internet will become fully autonomic, and therefore it will have its own form of intelligence, and it will start running things. And what we see now with Elon Musk, like they're removing government departments, they're putting all decision making over into the hands of AI. It's exactly what Louise Cypher said was going to happen in 2025.
I think it's less about free speech. I think it's more about, do we get to choose how the algorithms are programming us? Because the algorithms are definitively programming us. And it's very, very hard to tell what an algorithm is going to do and predict what it's going to do.
Once you have humanoid robots and deep intelligence, you basically have quasi-infinite products and services available. There's really no limit to the economy at that point. You can make anything. So I'm not sure at that point will money even be meaningful. I don't know. It might not be.
The paradigm of negative population growth is going to be changing, and the social problems that one will have in substituting humans for machines is going to be far easier in those countries that have declining populations.
Gas explosion tears through Russian bioweapons lab containing smallpox, Ebola and HIV virus, sparking major emergency.
That is absolutely wonderful, because as an environmentalist, I say to myself, the best possible news would be some mega emergency which got rid of huge chunks of the human race.
And we got Controlling the Game, a book title which you should read to understand the future. Technocracy Incorporated 1930s map. Truly, this is a real map from 1934, I believe. Technocracy of America. And what does it include? Greenland and Panama. Who was talking about that recently? I don't remember exactly. But the 1942 map of the New World. Now, a lot of people were saying they were expecting this after World War II. Or is it? Or is this the plan after this next war? That's the question, because these 10 kingdoms dividing up the planet included with Greenland and Canada and United States all the way down to Panama is one sector. These are divided by sectors, 10 of them, each with their interoperable. And you'll see Europe also, here it is, the 10 kingdoms map for you. And it shows exactly which countries are going to go with which sectors. Now, there might be some slight changes in our modern era, but remember, this is drawn up in the early 1970s based on the previous maps drawn up in the 1940s. 1942, how did they know when the war would end to draw that map anyway? Perhaps they knew the war would conclude, and then this was going to be the next, number 3, and then after this, the progression. It does match up with today's world.
You've said before that the U.S. would buy Gaza, and today you just said we're not going to buy Gaza.
We're not going to have to buy. We're going to have Gaza. We don't have to buy. There's nothing to buy. We will have Gaza.
What does that mean?
No reason to buy. There is nothing to buy. It's Gaza. It's a war-torn area. We're going to take it. We're going to hold it. We're going to cherish it. We're going to get it going eventually, where a lot of jobs are going to be created for the people in the Middle East. It's going to be for the people in the Middle East, but I think it can be a diamond. It can be an absolute tremendous asset for the Middle East. And you're going to have peace. It's going to bring peace in the Middle East. Gaza, the way it is right now, every 10 years, you're going to have the same thing happening. I've watched it so long, all the death and destruction of Gaza. The civilization's been wiped out in Gaza. No, it's going to be a tremendous thing. It's fronting on the sea. It's going to be a great economic development job. It's going to put people to work, a lot of people to work. And those people are all going to be from the Middle East.
Hey, Inspired Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers, John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is Thursday, February 13th, 2025. Out of the Matrix into prime reality. Boy, is it a journey, isn't it? Thank you for joining us on X Rumble and YouTube. Yeah, I think these clips, sometimes I just feel like they go together perfectly. They show the picture as it emerges from various sides. Before we go into today's subject, if you will, I want to emphasize that we are not fearful in any way. We want to leave fear right at the door, check it at the door. This is not about spreading some kind of fearful or scare scenario. That's not what this is about. It's a much, much bigger picture. And I remember a conversation from a few years back or someone in the music industry who, for all intents and purposes, is sort of, awake to a lot of the bigger picture, the bigger questions, certainly seeking, and always an interesting conversation. But as we were talking, I could sense a slight annoyance after a while in his voice. And eventually he looked at me and he said, not everything's about truth. And I remember distinctly saying, well, that's exactly what everything is about. Everything is either about truth or it does not matter, right? And recently, Christine and I had a conversation with someone whom we're going to introduce on this channel very soon, on this show. We're going to have him on. Very, very excited about that. But he asked us, why are you doing what you're doing? And in a nutshell, it's this. There's a realization. Living in untruth equals suffering in perpetuity. And it does not end. The suffering does not end until one begins living in truth, which you might not even call well-being or happiness. You just might call it the right way, if you will, living in a sense of balance, right? And so when I say the end is near and get your affairs in order, I truly mean that on various different levels. If we look at the old world, the old paradigm, the one paradigm that we were born into, that was indoctrinated into our brains, that formed our perception of this reality, of this world, of everything that we believed, that world is over with, right? So it's the end of that world. And in that particular way, that world's not coming back. So it's the end of this era. Coincidentally, at the same time, of course, it's not coincidentally, it's very true that at the same time, we're also living through an era of mass extinction of various species in the plant life, various species in the animal life, and of the human species, right? We're living through a mass extinction with the perspective of replacement of the human species and this biology. And we could look at all of this and simply say, like so many people are, I don't want to think about this. I don't want to look about this. I just want to focus on what I want to create. But that is not living in and with truth. Because living in and with truth does not necessarily mean to judge what we're seeing. It is to acknowledge it. It's not necessarily to say good, bad, wrong, right, but to acknowledge what the truth is. And because we have, collectively speaking, for the longest time not acknowledged the truth, we're in this period of great struggle for many, many people. Because not acknowledging truth is temporarily a strategy, perhaps, but in the long term, it's a death sentence. It's the death of spirit. It's the death of any kind of positive perception of life. And I look at the ability, or the inability, I shall say, of especially younger people to cope with what is going on. And here's the two polarities that we've got going on. It is the most difficult era, probably, in terms of perception, psychology, overwhelmment. It's one of the most difficult eras I could imagine that humanity's ever gone through. And it is the least equipped to go through it. You know, that's the two polarities that we got going on. So people have zero skills to deal with loss, to deal with tragedy, to deal with sadness, with grief, in general speaking. And at the same time, we have this over stimulating 24/7 ability to distract ourselves with everything and anything we could possibly imagine. Our screens provide us 24/7 distraction and a stream of endless information. And all of it is distracting from the fundamental truth and the fundamental truths. And I noticed that a lot of people are so invested in this world and in the outcome here and in the everything that is material. They're addicted, they're attached, because on some level they were programmed to believe that life begins here and life ends here. And so all their focus goes into the material, goes into the accumulation, goes into the attachment to the outcome in the material world. And so if the outcome is good, they're happy. If the outcome isn't good, they're sad, they're depressed, they're, traumatized. And unless we die while we're still alive, unless we go through that death while we're still alive, the death of the illusion, the death of lies, the death of false perception, unless we go through that, we will, in my perception, in my view, remain in a perpetual cycle of suffering, which you might go through the traditions in Buddhism and Hinduism and other traditions. And it is that attachment to the world being a lie, fundamentally being a lie. And when I talk about the world, I talk first and foremost about the construct, everything that we invented, all the structures that were created, which are fundamentally a lie. And the attachment to those, the attachment to this world equals the lie, and the lie equals the suffering. So how do we get out of those cycles? By acknowledging what is. It's not as hard as people think it is. You just have to be willing to step back and realize my consciousness is eternal. Life as we know it is not. Life as we know it is limited. It's a very, very short experience. Even if we were to return to a previous state of this body where we lived for hundreds of years, even that is nothing compared to no time, no limitations, right? Even 3, 4, let's say 900 years, even that means that life is limited. The physical body is limited. Our inhabiting this construct reality, all of it is limited. And so when we don't acknowledge that or push it to the back, we live a lie in at best in a half truth. And living in that half-truth also means living in constant suffering. You know, what I'm seeing, or what we're seeing as a potential, and I'm not even calling it good or bad, but as a potential in the air, is that in the period that we're in, somewhere between the years 2012 and the year 2046, if you will, it's not such a long period of time. It's like 34 years. It's not long, really. This period, according to many scholars and chronologists and researchers, and they point at different years, perhaps different periods, but this period seems to hold a very strong potential for a significant reset, for a significant catalyst event. Some people call it a catastrophe. Some people call it the reset of the simulation, or the restructuring, if you will, and point to different years and point to different cycles. But I would say that enough scholars, independently of each other, enough researchers, enough chronologists, independently of each other, enough traditionalists who have gone into traditions that have been around and that have been transported from generation to generation, independently of our Western education system. Okay, enough traditions and people and researchers have come to similar or very same conclusions on a different path, and that cannot be dismissed. Looking at the actions of governments in the world and powerful people in the world, looking at what they're doing, it cannot be dismissed. It does not necessarily mean that's the only outcome, but it is definitely a very plausible outcome, is that sometime between this very moment and these years, in the 2040s, we shall see one or multiple catalyst events. We've already seen on a very significant scale many of those. And you might say that if you go to different places in the world that have gone through disasters or wars, that their world was truly reset already. We just saw the clips of Gaza. You go to the Ukraine, you go to other smaller war zones that are not talked about as much, or you go to places that have had significant natural disasters or induced disasters, and they will already tell you, my world has already been turned upside down. It's already happened for me, like a sort of a reset, if you will. So it's not it's not conspiratorial or sort of doomsday to talk about this. Not at all. I would suggest that not talking about this it also means not talking about the mortality of this body and the eternity of our consciousness and the preparation. When I say get your affairs in order, it means various things. On one level, it means to prepare for a transition, whether you are 25 today or whether you're 85 today. The fundamental truth is not different, that we used to live with the wisdom that we consciously transitioned into this world and we consciously transitioned out of this world. We don't have that any longer for the vast majority of people. We don't have an intention for what lies ahead. We don't have an intention for, our journey beyond this world, so to speak. And everything is solely focused on this material stuff here, this physical world, so to speak. And the exploration of, is this a construct or simulation? Is it a part of a multidimensional construct? What lies beyond it? These are not theoretical things that are sort of interesting to ponder. I think these are some of the most important subjects of our time, and the fact that millions of people are exploring them and at a very rapid pace tells me that a catalyst event or even a mass exit might be coming very soon. Can we and can our consciousness change that? Sure, I don't think that anything is impossible. But either way, whether we can change that or not, at some point in the future, each and every one of us will exit this body. And when we are attached to the things in this world greatly, when we are so focused on the legacy that's attached to our names and the self-importance that's attached to our names here and our persona, when we focus all of our lifetime in accumulating stuff and material wealth, when we do not resolve the issues that we're having with people or family members or in relationships, or when we don't focus on the healing, so to speak, well, we take all that garbage and baggage and hurt, we take it with us, right? We bring it with us, and we are burdened by it. And it's it's sort of the optimal scenario to go in back into the cycle of coming back over and over again, and trapping ourselves, if you will. And so the when you begin realigning with truth, when you begin focusing on some of these very fundamental principles, which many people are beginning to do, your life, your spiritual journey, if you will, your soul journey, everything begins to fall back into a pattern of order. And I would venture, I'll go out on a limb here, and I will say that prime creation is order. There's order to everything. Interestingly enough, even within this construct, if we put something out of order on the molecular level, on that level, what we perceive as substance tries to bring itself back into order. Ultimately, everything, the pendulum wants to be in balance. It doesn't want to be here or there. The pendulum seeks to be in this perfect state of balance. And we cannot achieve that when we continually lie to ourselves. And it doesn't matter what level what level you use to lie to yourself. Any lie to ourselves puts us out of balance. The bigger the lie, the greater the pendulum swings. And this sort of almost insanity that we can observe in people, erratic behavior, decisions that make no sense, decisions that are fundamentally self-destructive. All these things point to the fact that we inherited a world out of order, and we haven't really focused on bringing more balance to it enough. And that's why millions, or I would say now hundreds of millions of people worldwide, look to a few people, a few select people in the outside world somewhere to fix the fundamental problems of our world, which they can't. Even if they were wonderful and amazing and truthful and honest, they couldn't, because it is an inside job. So we come here, and this place is hell-bent on putting us in a state of imbalance, right? This construct and the program that's running it, it's hell-bent on doing that. And everything inside of us really just wants to move back into balance. So who's in the way? We are. Our false stories, our false beliefs, our inability or non-willingness to look at the truth for what it is, not for what we want it to be. And who of you knows a persistent problem in their lives that does not seem to go away? Maybe you moved, maybe you changed partners, you have a different relationship, you got married to a different person, you changed your job, you changed even some of your habits, but that problem continues to show up in your life. Almost everybody knows such a problem. Almost everybody knows such a challenge. And why does it continue to show up? Collectively speaking, why do we run into the same problems? Why do we over and over and over again discuss the same fundamental problems? Just look at election cycles where these problems are discussed. They don't fundamentally change. They get a little bit of a different flavor, but ultimately they're the same fundamental problems. So why are these coming up? What do they point to? They point to a root cause that we're not willing to address, and root truth that we're not willing to see. It's the unwillingness. And so people will rather suffer for 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years or their entire lifetime than acknowledge the truth of a situation. And mostly the truth is not what it seems to be. In terms of the human experience, most people today, the vast majority of people is traumatized, right? What does that even mean? It means that such pain or shock was inflicted by whomever or whatever onto people and their system, their psychology, their physiology, their spirit. Such pain or shock was inflicted that it caused a severe injury. It might be an injury of the spirit, the soul, the psyche. Ultimately, it all works together. And when that injury didn't get to heal, wasn't acknowledged, was pushed away for whatever reason. Maybe you were too small and your psyche did it for you because it needed to protect you so you could live on. There are multiple reasons as to why this might have happened. But so now, most people carry that burden through their entire lives. And each and every decision in their lives is affected by that burden. The longer you carry it, the heavier it gets, the stronger the effects on you. So each and every decision is tainted by that, is fundamentally altered from what you would actually decide in your life, from what you would actually do. And so one of the fundamental truths of our time is that no amount of different government or different systems or external changes, no amount of that will have any impact on that unhealed thing inside of you. No amount. No, not a little, no amount. It will have no impact on that because it cannot change that. And even if that pain or that hurt or that suffering was inflicted by someone outside of you, which usually is the case, and even though they whoever those people were, they carry that responsibility, they cannot, unfortunately, have the responsibility to do the healing for you. It simply doesn't work that way, as unfair as it might seem, but it doesn't work that way. So healing equals truth. Non-healing is like living a lie. And what does living a lie do? It creates a lot of suffering. So getting our affairs in order means that we begin on a fundamental level to acknowledge the truth of our lives. What has hurt us, how we can heal that, how we can resolve that, how we can begin to step forward into a better way. And none of it can happen unless we look truth in the eye. And that's why we'll go back to the very first statement that I made here today, is that the person that I was talking to tried to justify their statement. He tried to justify saying to me that not everything is about truth. Absolutely everything is about truth. How could it not be? How could anything else matter more than that? And we have been successfully programmed that truth isn't something that can be found, verified, or isn't even a observable thing, that it is subjective, that it depends on who you are and what your feelings and perspective is. Well, that is your perception, but that's not truth. So once we reintroduce the understanding that truth is a truly objective thing, and it does exist, and it can even be measured. Once we reintroduce that, we can step out of the greatest deception and the greatest lie. Because once you introduce the idea that truth as such does not exist, and you say that our insistence to find it, to feel it, to live it, is a disease or a distraction or a mental disorder, well, you have created the devil's playground, right? You have created the greatest deception. And in such, all of the lies could be introduced because there is no counter, no real truth to counter it. But there is. I'm not saying I'm holding it. I'm not saying we have 24/7 full access to it. What I'm saying is we have dedicated our lives to living it, to seeking it, to finding it, to exploring it, to embodying it, and ultimately bring all of life, or help, of course, help bring all of life back to truth. But if that isn't the fundamental objective of someone's life, that life will be caught in a vicious cycle of suffering and deception and self-deception and hurting of oneself and others. There's just no other way. And when people out there in the political arena today, like President Trump or Elon Musk, whatever, speaks of a golden age, and they begin to define what that golden age is, I sort of have to think to myself, clearly there must be a severe level of pain and suffering within them, that they would think that the golden age is a better economy, that it is better production, that it is more industry in the United States, that signifies a golden age, and not a fundamental return to balance and truth and creation. Understanding that ultimately, if we are, which to me is not an if, it's a certainty, if we are divinely created, and by divinity I mean the source of all creation, the initial design, if we truly are created like that, then there is a balanced, a creative, a beautiful, a harmonious way, which might be described as the golden way or the golden age if that's needed. But that is actually life itself. And that this, what we're experiencing, is a cheap imitation of that, and that's why it's causing so much suffering and pain. What I'm proposing is that with every day, we have the ability to make a choice. We either choose truth in all things, all our deeds, all our thoughts as the guiding principle, or we choose comfort, we choose acquiescence, we choose laziness, we choose entertainment, we choose someone else's perception. We can choose all those things. We choose distraction, right? And with every day that we choose truth, our system, our thinking, our spirit, our soul begins to align more with that. And so what you couldn't feel before now becomes obvious to you. You could have done something for 30 years because you never really gave it much thought or never really tuned in. And now you tune in with the truth. And now you're seeing that that is destructive to you and others. And you cease to do it because it's not the truth. So absolutely everything is about the truth. And people like, Dr. Hawkins, the power versus force, for example, famous researcher of consciousness, has dedicated his entire life to helping people to see that truth exists. It is measurable. We can learn how to measure how to measure the truth, and we can learn to live with it again. This cannot be brought to us from the outside. This has to be rebirthed from the within. And then death, the end of physical life, why would that be possibly something that scares us, something that makes us afraid? Why? I don't know. If we are not this body, which we're not, if we're not this mind, which we're not, if we're not of this world, which we're not, why would we fear at some point leaving it in the form that we're in it now? We wouldn't. And we don't. So now, take the other side of this coin. If you don't acknowledge that, if you don't think about that, if you don't meditate on that or pray on that or walk with that, whatever you do, contemplate it, then the world has programmed you to fear that. So each and every decision you make is born from that fear. And decisions born from fear breed decisions born from fear. It's a cycle. And I watch the world and how it justifies what it does, and it's all born from fear. It's a world that's running on fear and that's convincing others to also run on fear. Well, it doesn't have to be that way. And, fundamentally speaking, life is not that. That's life inverted. And what does life inverted mean? Or, if you spell it with a V, it means evil. That's literally what evil is. It's just an inversion. Everything has been inverted. Everything has been turned upside down. And, we posted something yesterday about, which was pertaining to schools and what schools really are and how they function, what they do. And there was a teacher that I think felt attacked perhaps, and she had the need to point out that children need that kind of guidance and they need to be in schools, and that they are, a lot of them are not very intelligent or bright or can't even focus, and this is observing the effect of untruth. And I can't argue with that, but it's not an observation of truth. It's an observation of untruth. And that observation of untruth is only valid if it actually leads to an exploration of the truth, which is that if and when we create an environment, a reality that is in alignment with life and truth again, there is not a snowball's chance in hell that children are dumb and distracted and incapable. But when they're born literally into hell, what do you expect? And when we perpetuate that hell and tell them we need to prepare them so they can exist in hell, you need to prepare them for the real world. How about we help foster an environment that allows them to help us to create a better reality, to create a better existence? I don't want to bash anyone. And naturally, in a few short words and in a few short comments, you can't always explore the entire truth. But this is what we're here to do, and this is what sort of drives us every single day, is that we can. That we absolutely can, and that we will not stop. That's the mission. That's the mission statement. Truth equals life, equals love, equals high consciousness. Untruth equals eternal suffering. All right, my friends. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you for everyone who's joined us recently in the Inspired community on Locals, inspired.locals.com. We enjoy that tremendously. And we will continue working on all levels, firing on all cylinders for the truth. Sometimes we'll get it wrong. Sometimes we'll be emotional. We'll be caught up in the emotion of the moment. That's a human thing. But fundamentally, Christine and I and our family, our team is in service of the truth. wherever it might lead us. Much love, many blessings. We'll be back with you again very, very soon. Listen, right now you could be only a few clicks away from experiencing something amazing, something that has changed thousands of lives all over the world. I'm talking about a high consciousness field similar to those at pilgrimage sites and sacred places. It's where people go to heal, to connect, and to become the best possible version of themselves. With FLFE, you can bring such a high consciousness field into your home right now. It's a spiritual quantum technology based on the work of Nikola Tesla. Better sleep, more energy, greater well-being, improved finances, electrosmog mitigation. These are only some of the things people on the FLFE service are experiencing. Try it now for 15 days completely free of charge, no credit card needed. Just click on a link down below to start your free, no strings attached FLFE trial right now.